Mark, thanks for joining us again today. It's been a while since you've been here with us.
It has. You got a great show, great audience. So, I'm honored to be able to jump in and answer some questions and hopefully have some fun with pets.
Hey, also congratulations about your new book, Pet Nation.
You're in Florida. The term is like Gator Nation or Seminole Nation or Dolphin Nation. It's that notion that sports fans don't talk about money and any of that. They just talk about last week's game and so forth. There's a real common bond. And that's what pets have done to me across the American landscape.
Absolutely.
Well, and you know what else he got right? He said that we have great listeners and a great show. So that makes me really
happy. He did
happy.
Get that right.
Yeah, we like that.
So, Mark, what prompted you to write this book?
An agent found me, which is a nice position to be in. Because major publishers really wanted the story from the inside with some thought, not just a report. What happened in America in the last 20 years that just totally transformed not just how we relate to pets, but the role of pets in American culture, American society. And I had been thinking about that for about 5 years and was not planning to write a book, to tell you the truth. But as it was proposed to me, I thought, let's take a run at it. And I enjoyed writing it and the research, and hopefully the public will like it when it hits these stores and online September 21. And it's about cats and dogs, just so you know. If you look at the cover of the book, a cat's smiling, looking down at a dog like, you can't get up here as fast as I can, which is what my Bengals do every day with my Papillon puppy, who just can't understand their ability to elevate 6 feet, on a moment's notice. So,
and your visit is so appropriate, visiting with us with our mission.
Sure.
Promoting
enhancing the bond between people, pets and their people. So that's great.
People like this phrase. I often say my dog's short, fast, smart, and funny. And they say, well, that's you. I said, oh, I guess we like our dogs.
Pet Nation reveals something about us, not about just our dogs and cats, but something has changed without our realizing it. So what's changed?
I think a couple things. It's not the story that people like pets, because people liked pets 20 years ago. What's changed is that pets and veterinary medicine and healthcare and everything to do with pets move from kind of an accessory or a sideshow in American culture to right in the center of it. And how did that happen and why did it happen? Because it wasn't like we got an order one day from politicians to do that or something. No, people experienced the human-animal bond. And as you both know, that's a scientific thing that goes on in your brain. And engagement with pets boosts your oxytocin, which makes you happy and relaxed. And it reduces your cortisol, which makes you stressed and anxious. And when pets came inside, and I'm a baby boomer, you're supposed to look at me and say, you can't be a baby boomer, but I am. And we were the generation watching Lassie, watching Scooby-Doo, watching a host of shows when pets started to come inside. It wasn't just go back in your backyard for 10 minutes when you got home from school and play, but they came inside. And I think what happened was the engagement with pets provoked, in a positive way, this experience of, wow, this is just a lot more fun. This means a lot more to me than what I thought it did. And we didn't read a book about it and go buy a pet and test the theory. It just became the case. Now there are 32,000 studies in one shape or another about what pet engagement does for people in need, autistic children, people waiting to get cardiac surgery, teenagers dealing with abuse, seniors that are shut in, that don't eat enough, and just a whole range of problems. And frankly, pets are the cheapest medicine in the US. And I'm on a crusade to have more pets in America, which terrifies a lot of people walking New York sidewalks where they have to go around a fleet of Afghans or Great Danes. But the truth is, pets have been discovered to be so beneficial in a fundamental way. And I think that's the change. And it wasn't a day or a week that it happened, but it came like a wave that you saw from a ways off that seemed small. And by the time it got to shore, it captured now 70% of the households have pets.
One of my first really striking memories of pet ownership was based in a movie, which was based on the original Murder on the Orient Express with the Princess Dragomirov. Do you remember the movie?
Yeah.
Holding up her two Pekingese.
Yeah.
And it struck me so funny. And I agree with pretty much everything you said. But what I've always found, especially when you start looking at an element like travel and traveling with pets, the rich have always experienced, the wealthy have,
Sure.
and the royalty have always experienced the bond between pets.
Yeah.
The majority of common people could never do that because they couldn't afford pets. So, when you start thinking about historical perspective about pets, now in the last, 50 or 60 years, more people have had pets. And of course, in the last 20, people are bringing them inside. But I think the wealthy have always received those benefits. And that's why they have captured pets in pictures in the 1800s and the 1700s. So I think that feeling existed, except it wasn't commonplace for everyone.
Here's one of the things that changed. And it was two advertising agencies, the one that handled Subaru and one that handled Nissan back in the 90s. Can you imagine telling the CEO of both those car companies, and those are middle-class car companies, Subaru and Nissan are not high-end, they're not Lexus, Beamers, and Mercedes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And can you imagine telling the CEO when he wants to see next year's TV plan and the tens of millions that they spent on that, and hundreds of millions now, and they showed them an ad that was a Subaru or a Nissan going down a California beach highway with the dog in the passenger seat smiling. And the CEO must have said, well, where's the facts? Where's the stats? I don't see anything about the engine, mileage. And they're like, no, that's the point. We just want to show a happy dog sitting in a car. That's your brand. And I'm sure they were like, you can't be serious. And 10 years later, 20 years later, right, you can't turn on TV for, again, marketing aimed at the middle class, not at the elite.
Sure.
And there's pets involved. And, for a long time, dogs and cats were laborers, except for the wealthy. I love your point there, because cats came over as sanitation workers on ships. Your job is to eat the mice and rats so our food doesn't get destroyed, and then clean up our streets and our cities. And then all of a sudden, 150 years later, there's 100 million pet cats sleeping on top of your bed and treating us like staff the way cats do, and what a transformation. And the data on dogs, to me, really highlights it. In 2015, in the study I sponsored through a national research firm, Americans with household income under $30,000, which is below the poverty line, owned dogs at the same percentage as Americans with household incomes of $100,000 and more. So dog ownership had become, just to your point, no longer an emblem or the privilege of the wealthy, but it was everywhere. And that's the key. In fact, one of the concerns right now with the shortage of dogs and COVID and the pandemic has accelerated that, is do you run the risk that they move back into being a luxury item? The golden doodle puppy now is about a $5,000 expense.
And it's a mutt. I'm sorry. I have to say that. I mean, don't give me a dirty look, Dr. Fleck.
Hey, veterinarians make a living off mutts. It's
sure.
True.
No, I only say that because, and you can jump in, Dr. Fleck. I mean, we support all dog ownership, right? It's not just about purebred dogs. So I always say, I remember going to, I have these seats at Westminster there in the second row, and I enjoy, going to the dog show every single year. And I remember my cousin had went with me, and, she's very accomplished. She's the president of La Perla at a very young age, Harvard graduate, and she has a little cockapoo. And she said, well, can I show Bella? And I said, well, unfortunately, even though it's a lovely dog and beautiful, she's a mixed breed dog. So it's not being a purebred dog snob. It's just being like, people are willing to spend $5,000, and that's a lot of money, Well,
what's interesting with the designer breeds, as you say, the quote mutts, it tells you the price of dog hair, right? Because when you put the poo at the end, it's because everybody figured out if you breed it with a poodle, it won't shed. And who'd have thought that would maybe be a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 differential? But it's an interesting thing, and it's So now, what evolved was dogs became, people discovered what dogs could do. Then they took dogs right out the front door, figuratively, into every corner of America. And part of my book's about that story. And that one's the most fascinating to me. And the best example is the travel industry. If you had told me 20 years ago, there's going to be a national hotel group, Kimpton Hotels, which are really cool. There's about 120 around the country. And it will reach a point where they'll have a floor dedicated to non-pet owners. I'd have laughed and said, what are you talking about? You can't take a dog into a hotel 20 years ago. Now we've reached a point where certain chains reserve a corner of the hotel if you don't like pets, if you have an allergy. Otherwise, the pets are all over this hotel and get used to it. And that's been, that has been as dramatic a change as pets coming into the workplace. But that was because of an amazing study by Carrie O'Hara, PhD, who now I partner with in a number of things. And what she found out, she sampled 1,500 employees of companies of 100 employees or more. 1,000 owned dogs, 500 didn't. And it tested reactions to pets in the workplace. There was essentially no difference between the non-pet owners and the pet owners. They all liked the company better. They liked their boss better. They liked their fellow employees better if it was a dog-friendly workplace, even if you didn't own a dog in your life. Just the presence, the effect it had on your employees, just your ability to enjoy that. So now companies are scrambling, particularly as COVID hopefully reaches a new stage of normalcy. Companies are scrambling, as you've probably seen in Florida, to accommodate workers that are essentially saying, I don't really want to come back full time, particularly if I can't bring my dog at all. How about twice a week? And the 20 years ago you would have been laughed at, and now it's the consultants are telling companies figure that out, because millennials have pets and they want to be around them.
Mark, I'm really so glad that you're on the show today, because this has been a big part of what we're trying to help with the movement, and we're really in the pioneer stage of this cultural change of attitude. I think that's what it's all about. And part of our show today will be expanding on that in the health part of it, with veterinarians and the interpretation that
Sure.
veterinarians need to deal with the pet parents and their relationship with pets. For example, a pet turns 8 years old, you got kids that are 8 years old, it's different. And we have to understand that. And I think you're bringing that point out really well. They're part of the family now. They're part of our existence. And we need to understand what they need to help both of us in the relationship, our pets and ourselves.
It's a great point, Doctor. And we're now at the point that nearly 60% of all pets in the country are owned by millennials or Gen Zs. 60%, all right? Baby boomers were the largest cohort, but now their children or grandchildren have changed that. And they've sent one clear message to pet healthcare and to service providers. We want the same quality and scale of healthcare and service for our pets as for ourselves, and we'll pay for it. Now, you would think the veterinary profession, your profession, you would think that they would stand up and cheer, kiss the ground every morning and go, I can't believe my good fortune. But they weren't trained at a time in a model of vet care that understood that. And it's still a challenge for veterinarians to take the view of pet healthcare through the eyes of the pet owner, right? Which, as you say, is both for the benefit of the pet owner and the pet. And the idea that you bring your dog in and we'll pick him up at the end of the day and we'll fix it. That's not millennials. You know what they want? They want advice. They would like you, and they'll pay you for it, to tell them whenever they want on the phone or through text, whatever, how to raise their pet, how to take care of their pet, what stuff means. And people will say to me, well, why would they do that? And the answer is we do it for ourselves, right? My wife heads anatomy at Mayo Clinic's med school here in Arizona, and I get to go to Mayo for my medical care. I want advice, don't I? I get that one shot a year in my annual physical, but I'm getting information all day long, whether I want it or not, from social media. And you want to learn how to take care of yourself, right? And so it's just the same thing with people's pets because of the status they've achieved. And it's still, I think, you still have veterinarians who fear that this is a fad, that it can't sustain itself. And that's been my main point in Pet Nation. We're literally just getting started. You know, people aren't taking their pets back to shelters now unless they literally don't have any choice. But you're not seeing people go, well, that was a fun COVID run we had with Sparky, but bye Sparky, good luck. You know, hope you make it. They're not doing that. It's the relationship's too deep.
In the book, you write about pet rights legislation and unforeseen legal issues that come up with elevating their status. So let's talk about that, because I think that's part of something that we're just starting to talk about at home with our friends, with our families.
Great question. And lawyer to fellow lawyer, you know, it's always great. You know, it's obviously the ultimate profession to be an attorney. So congratulations.
I question that statement.
There you go. Well,
wait a second. You want to be a football player. If you had your way, wouldn't you want to be like a quarterback for Michigan State or something like that?
Well, of course.
Okay.
But since I can't be that, I think being a veterinarian is top of the line.
I love data, not just because my wife's a statistical geek, a PhD, but and here's a piece of data you'll find interesting, because I told the whole pet world this. As you have the success you're having, and as culture and society changes in your favor in terms of how we treat pets, you put a bullseye on your back, believe me, for issues of politics and legal issues. My firm tracks 365 days a year, all 50 states, any legislative or agency activity concerning pets, veterinarians, and so forth, right? 3 years ago, 15,000 pieces of legislation. This year, 25,000 pieces of legislation in all 50 states. The point is, there's a lot of interest in it. And part of it is right at your question. Well, if we treat pets as members of the family, if they are effectively, and I always say that's an insult to pets, they get a better deal than kids do. And pets don't turn into teenagers. So, you know, they don't? Not that I've seen. I have 5 kids. My dog and 2 cats. You know, piece of cake. They break more things, but in any event, there is this question of, if a veterinarian or some pet food or pharmaceutical injures or kills my dog, I understand that if I sued to try to get recovery, I couldn't get any emotional loss or companionship damages. These are called non-economic damages, a legal term that you're familiar with. And that's harsh to people, right? It's like, if that happened to a child of mine, I could do that. And it could be a lot of money. It doesn't replace their life, but it's partly the compensation. And pets are treated as property. They're treated as property under the English common law. And I studied medieval and Renaissance history as a kid in college. What a great career choice, right? But that law has been around for 1,000+ years. So people challenge now the idea, shouldn't pets be given the status of a person or a child? And, you know, as a lawyer and as a lobbyist, I've been active for 15 years in stopping that from happening, which not because I'm mean-spirited, but the impact that would have on the economics of veterinary care is staggering, is not too strong of a word. Because you then start practicing defensive medicine. You have to take every test you just to cover your rear end, so to speak. And that's what's happened to human medicine. And it's the source of huge damage wards. And a lot of the costs that are baked into the human healthcare system is doctors protecting themselves on the advice of lawyers to make sure if something bad happens, they're not going to be hit with a multi-million-dollar reward. And there are people say pets should be given that same status. And I've made the case that you close the door of access to pet healthcare for a lot of people if you drive that much cost into the system. Interestingly, state after state, blue state, red state, doesn't matter what the politics are, have rejected the suggestion to make that change. And that's a good debate. And PETA and organizations like PETA keep trying to push the sort of personhood of animals, to treat gorillas and chimps as people, horses as people, dolphins as people, and ultimately dogs or cats as people. Some go to the extent of saying having a pet is like having a slave, and pets should be set free, which would pretty much only please coyotes. who would wait and greet them as their owners let them go and said good luck. So that's a challenging issue. The best way to look at it, in my view, is if your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your favorite aunt or uncle, your grandparent, your brother is injured or killed, you don't get to sue somebody for that. It's only a spouse or a child. And that's a tough issue. My answer always seems harsh, even to vet students. I've given this lecture many times to vet colleges around the country, and I concede it's a challenging issue, but it's just a policy question. We don't have enough money to have everybody whose lives are affected by loss be able to recover. So that's been a really interesting battle. And then, of course, the whole question of access for pets. You can't walk into a store as a member of a different ethnicity or race than the store owner and be told you can't come into my store because you're Latino. You can't do that. That's a civil rights violation. It should be, of course. It doesn't, hopefully isn't happening, but it may still in certain places. There's the argument made, should a store owner have any right to bar a pet from coming in? They don't bar children, as kids walk through stores and knock things over. And that, to me, will be the next wave of issues with pets, in part, is pushing them further into the social sphere, the public sphere, with still 30% of Americans not owning pets and probably not appreciating it.
It's more than relationships. It's just the acknowledgement of living in a world with other people.
Well, and social media has something to do with that too, good and bad.
Mm-hmm. Number
one, as people spend more time, with this device, with their smartphone and on their laptop or their iPad, quote, engaging, but in reality, it's a different level of engagement, right?
Mm-hmm.
They've discovered that having that cat on your lap, having that puppy at your feet who will do anything you want, puppies are ideology free. They're, for the most part, neuroses free. They're income free. They're ethnicity blind, right? I mean, there's an unconditional quality to pets in a world that now stratifies everything, right? I mean, the lens we have to apply and the screens that we have to have in our head as we kind of navigate through the world right now with all that's going on, as you've pointed out, politically, socially, economically, and so forth. Pets are the one kind of category. They're just there, right? Your cat has no sense of that, yet it's an intelligent being that you can engage and have a relationship with. And I think absent social media, it would have taken a lot longer, and I'm not sure I would have had a book to write. I think in two respects. One, this personal friend quality that came in at a time when there was more and more isolation for people on the one hand. And secondly, suddenly pets replaced babies as the subject of the videos that are now constant in social media. And you have people, again, regardless of their class or income or anything, sharing videos of what their dog or cat just did with people all over the country, all over the world, and feeling like they're part of something bigger than just themselves. Whether it's tied to breeds, size of dog, people that like pet clothes or not, whatever. You're a member of something when increasingly it's the price of being a member of something in the country, particularly politically, right? I mean, that's just, who wants to talk politics right now? Who wants to get near an ideological discussion, as you say? I have friends, I remember, I'm from Portland, Oregon originally, really hardcore, hard left city. And, I have friends that have posted, if you voted for Donald Trump, you cannot be my friend. And I said, wait a second. Do you have to go that far? I mean, have we taken politics where they're just, regardless of why somebody does something, just the mere fact they voted for an incumbent president turns you into it? You cannot be in my world. And I'm not a fan of Donald Trump in saying that. I mean, I'm pretty agnostic on that front. But I just find that really interesting. And pets transcend all of that.
Thanks for viewing our content on Pet Buzz Plus.